Well, Boris, thank you for spending time in the world of tennis. It's always a good opportunity to talk with you. Six-time Grand Slam champion, but your first one at 17 years of age. Did it all happen too early?
Well, you happy when it happens. Most people don't get the chance to win one. 17 was indeed very early. I'm still the youngest, and obviously my life has changed tremendously since then. I was called the 7th of July 1985 my second birthday, because until then I was this unknown young tennis player from West Germany, and from then on I became this sports phenomenon that did something nobody else did before. So it changed quite dramatically.
Is it possible that another 17-year-old or someone even close to that age could win a Grand Slam?
Well, I hope not. Then my record will be broken, and I am just a Wimbledon champion.
That's very honest of you, because most people pretend that their records are made to be broken, but it is important for you to have that place in history?
I think it's a nice record to have. Obviously, it's been 27 years since then, and the game, or it seems like the players are getting older when they first time around start to win big tournaments or Grand Slams. But obviously, those days we had more teenagers in the top 10. We have more teenagers winning Grand Slam. Mats Wilander was 17, and Michael Chang was young. Pete Sampras was young, but obviously the game has changed a little bit.
Well, you mentioned pressure already a couple times just in the short beginning of this interview. Has there ever been an athlete in tennis, possibly in all the world, that's had to confront the amount of pressure on a consistent basis that you have?
I don't know. I'm obviously, I did a few things in tennis nobody has done. I was very young doing them. There are many different sports all around the world, and whoever is good at an early age is put under a lot of pressure. It just comes with the territory. You have to learn to deal with that. You have to grow up in the spotlight, and that's not always easy. But I did the best I can. I'm still around. I'm still somewhat sane. So it wasn't too bad. But obviously there were many others that couldn't cope with the pressure and just disappeared.
What has been one of the toughest parts of your early success and early fame?
Well, obviously the expectations after winning when at 17 were sky high, meaning everybody pretty much said, well, for the next 10 years I would rule tennis, and I'm going to break all the records. That obviously it's much easier said than done, and I've won a couple other slams after that, and I did become number one in the world, but it wasn't a walk in the park. And then when you lose and when you don't meet your own expectations, then obviously critics quickly jump out of the bush, and that's part of being a professional sportsman.
It's one of the toughest things about people that are great at things. We've seen it with Roger Federer, how easy he makes it look, or even other sports, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, whomever, is that they do themselves a disservice by almost making it look so easy.
Well, what's the options? You want to make it difficult. I mean, you want to miss the point, you want to miss the putt, you want to miss the layup. You do the best you can, and in a moment of perfection, it does look easy, and it seems easy. It seems easy, but it's certainly far from the truth. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of discipline. In all the hours that you spend on the practice courts that are not televised, that you don't talk about. Those are the reasons. Those champions, win big championships. But obviously, when they're in that mode of perfection, it's just a beauty.
You mentioned perfection. Is that something that you struggled with, constantly striving for it, but like all of us, it's impossible to attain?
I did the best I could. I always wanted to have a long, successful career. Obviously, trying to win every tournament I played, that's impossible, but that's what you strive for. The ultimate goal is always to be the best in the profession. I was able to achieve that. Now I wanted to become the best in my profession for as long as I played. Everybody's allowed to dream. Others being longer number ones, but look, I've had almost 15 years of a tennis career. I really didn't have a long layover. I didn't have a serious injury, and I was fortunate to be able to play for that long. There are many talents out there that after a year or two they have a broken knee or broken back or some other problems besides the court, and they're not as fortunate. So yes, of course, I would have loved to win 15 Grand Slams and 5 years number one, but it didn't happen. But I'm still happy with it.
You have a special kinship with Wimbledon. I could just hear it the way you talk about it. Why is it so special to you?
Well, it's my professional birthplace. It's the place it's my home now. I live in Wimbledon. I feel very comfortable there. The tournament has been good to me. It gave me all the opportunities that I have today. It wasn't always easy, but I loved it. I love the grass. I love the English countryside, and it's my home.
What about the diving? That was such a trademark of yours. You can't even think about someone diving in tennis where it's actually dubbed a Boris Becker. I mean, was that just instinctual? Was that something that was conscious, or were you just so physically skilled that was the best way to defend the net?
Well, quite honestly, I think I wasn't fast enough on my feet. Therefore, in order to get the ball, I had to, make that jump, or had to make that dive, and that's so much easier on the grass because you land nice and soft. When it's on the hard courts, I got some bruises and bumps on my hips and below. But that was my style. I played very physical. I didn't want to give up any points. If my legs couldn't carry me, I still had other parts of my body to go for it.
What about the U.S. Open? You were a U.S. Open winner. I beat Lendl in the final. I still remember it. 4-set, 6-4 in the 4-set tiebreak. You thinking about where you're going to serve, and I remember thinking power right up the tee. You powered it right through the Lendl backhand, right up the tee, gave it your trademark, Boris Becker. Understated, powerful, but perfectly matched with the situation. But in that tournament, I was at the match. You were an inch away from losing to a good friend of mine and yours and a great guy, Derek Rostanu.
Yeah.
The let cord. I mean, it's amazing how quickly things could turn in sports and in tennis, and luck and how you make your own luck. What about the U.S. Open and how that turned and what that means to you and that match and that whole experience, how it all came together to making you a U.S. Open champion?
The U.S. Open is one of the biggest tournaments in the world, as long as I can remember. For Europeans, it's a bit more difficult coming over to the Big Apple. The atmosphere is different. New Yorkers are very noisy. They don't necessarily care who's playing up in the center court. They want to have a good time, and if they want to eat that sandwich and then open up that package, that's what they're going to do.
It's just tough for a tennis player because it's about them.
Yeah.
Tennis players are having it all about them. It's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and staying in some of the nice hotels in Manhattan, and the traffic and the rush hours and all this, very, very foreign to Europeans. So it took me a couple of years to really get used to it, and obviously in '89 everything clicked together. But that's what I was talking about earlier. It's so easy to talk about the final and the perfection that you reach there, but in order to get there, you have to go through suffering, you have to go through pain, you have to have a bit of luck on the side, and certainly in the Derek Rostanu match, I was 2 match points down and hit the net code over. Sure, I still had to come back and win the 5th set, but at that very moment, the tournament was over for me. But as a professional athlete, you learn to deal with the ups and the downs. You learn with the percentages that that are favoring you and favor the other guy, and you just go with the punches. And that's what I meant with pressure. In any match you play, it can be your last match, and every time you leave the hotel room and practice, you have to be aware of that. I was fortunate that year. I was playing Lendl in the final, which I felt comfortable in a way, even though it was in New York and he won the tournament 3 times. I didn't have the best of backhand returns, and I was able to approach it even on a hard court on a quite regular basis. It all came together. I won that 4th setter, and it's been my biggest tournament here.
You've had a lot of other success in New York as well. Now the Barclays ATP World Tour Finals used to be played at Madison Square Garden. You have some pretty impressive memories from success there. That year in championships, you have all 8 players there. How is that a unique format, and what do you remember about playing in the Garden?
Well, the Garden was always the biggest sporting arena growing up. I remember getting up at night and watching the Muhammad Ali fights in the Garden. I'd always loved the Knicks. There's so many other sporting events in the Madison Square Garden, and when they had the tennis masters, in those days it was called the Masters, in there, it was just 2 weeks before Christmas. Everybody wanted to come, and the money you've earned at the tournament you were going to spend doing the Christmas shopping. That was the deal. So the better you got, everybody was more happy about it. I always liked indoors. It was a bit easier for me with my style, and those days I had a quite fast carpet in there, so my serve and volley style was just perfectly suited. And yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to come a few weeks before Christmas to New York and win some dollars playing tennis?
I remember I was there again, and one of the most amazing things I've seen, that fifth set tiebreak against Lendl, that long, protracted rally, and at the end of it, they had those loose nets in the garden, and boom, it hits the top of the tape. There's that second of uncertainty, and it just plops over, and all of a sudden, the match just ends. I mean, that's such an interesting dynamic to end such a big match in such a big situation.
Yeah, and we both weren't quite sure on which side the ball dropped, so I couldn't really scream in jubilation, and Ivan couldn't really be upset because we both looked at each other and we had to listen to the umpire, who then said game, set, match, Becker. Only then I knew that I won the match. And that rally actually lasted 72 strokes. So think about, you're playing the fifth set tiebreaker at 6-5 after 4.5 hours of playing. And then you still be able, him as well, to have a 72-shot rally to finish it. It was quite something else. And I called it my most special match point.
We had a bunch of amazing matches in the Barclays ATP World Tour Finals. The final in Hanover against Sampras. No one had lost their serve into 4-5 in the fifth set. It was one of the most incredible reactions we'd ever seen from Sampras. What made your rivalry and matchup with him so special?
Well, until Pete Sampras came along, I felt that I was able to call Wimbledon my home. On a good day on a grass court, I felt it was very difficult to beat me. Then all of a sudden, this American comes along with the big serve and the perfect grass court game, and the volleys and the mental toughness. And all of a sudden, I felt that when he was playing his best, and I was playing my best, he's actually better than me, and that didn't really go down well with me.
Is that tough to accept?
Well, that was the time I felt like I slowly decided to go out of tennis because I played to win. I played to be number one. I played to be the Wimbledon champion. And ever since Sampras, came around, I felt that he's the next one. So obviously the challenge was great, and I didn't want to accept that. And whenever I had the chance to play him, I just wanted to give it my all. And I felt that was probably the best tennis match I've ever played. It was in Germany, obviously. 15,000 Germans behind me, and I beat him in the round robin in that week, again with 7-6, 7-6. So we haven't lost a serve for about 7 sets there, and we met in the final, and it was just 7-6, 6-7, 7-6, 6-7, back and forth, and then finally somebody had to go down, and Pete was playing at his peak. He was a clear number one then, and I was about number 4 or 5 in the world, and I felt like gave him everything I had, in my home country, and it was still better. So I think that's why it was so special.
When you decided that you were no longer the best, you lost a match to Sampras, and you took him aside and said some things to him, and essentially, I'll let you tell it, but essentially you said you conceded the throne.
Yeah.
When you embraced him, what exactly did you tell him?
Yeah, I told him, I've made up my mind. Obviously, actually during the match. I was playing in the quarterfinal there.
It's actually during the match, while you're trying to beat him, and it was a battle. I mean, you had some chances. You felt that his best was better than your best, and that it was significant enough that you were going to call it a day.
Yeah, it was in '97, and in '96 I had a serious wrist injury. I broke my tendon, and I was seeded 1 at Wimbledon, and I thought that if I come back healthy again, if I'm able to, get back into form and back into shape, and I'm playing somebody I truly respect, I think I want to be humble enough to say I want to quit on my own terms. Then I reached the quarterfinal, and I played Sampras, and I felt, on center court, this could be the right moment for me to, tell him first that this is going to be my last match at Wimbledon. And he was quite surprised at the net when I, whispered in his ear, forgetting that about 1 million people listened to it on TV. So when I came back to the locker room, everybody was stunned, starting from my coach, and nobody knew, even in my closest circle, that I was going to make the decision. Obviously, I had to do a long press conference, I had to do a lot of explaining to do, but I felt that, Pete deserved that honor of being the first one to know that this was my last one.
Which player do you identify with the most right now?
I truly respect Roger Federer. I think he's just an incredible ambassador for the game for such a long time. I love Nadal. I love Djokovic. I'm a big fan of Murray, but my favorite is Federer because the way he plays tennis. He has to serve. He comes into the net. He has to back and slice. His variety of tennis is something that most kids should emulate. And I feel that he's carrying that burden of being the ambassador and the most successful player of all time, and just in a perfect manner. And so I admire him for that.
Is he the best player of all time?
That is a difficult judgment, because you can't compare generations. It's very difficult to say on a good day, was he better than McEnroe? Was he better than Borg? Was he better than myself? Was he better than Sampras? He certainly won 17 Grand Slams. Nobody has done that. To call him the best ever, I have a hard time saying that.
How would you try to play him?
I don't think he liked my pace. I don't think he liked the fact that I would come all the time forward, attack his second serve, come forward myself on my second serve, not giving me any time, any rhythm to start his trademark forehand and backhand cross courts and so forth. So, the more time you give a player like that, the better he becomes.
You had a great rivalry with Stefan Edberg. Both players moving forward, classic style. You guys played in the Wimbledon final 3 times. What made playing against him so challenging?
Well, because he first of all, he was a nice guy. I'd rather play players that I didn't like so much. But Stefan was just a class act on and off the court. I knew him from the juniors days. He was the #1 junior when I was around, and we played similar. He played with a bit more topspin and a bit more and just coming forward, where I had a bit more power. But our general style was very similar. So I don't know. I feel like I played him 100 times. I won most of them. Unfortunately, in our 3 consecutive Wimbledon finals, he got me 2 out of 1.
You were very candid about that last one where you got down. You played for your standard, a deplorable first 2 sets, almost sleepwalking. 6-2, 6-2 in the first 2 sets. You fought back, and then he won in the third. But you were very candid, and sleepwalking was probably an honest assessment, since you had said that you had taken a few too many sleeping pills and woke up very, very groggy, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, is that, look, we all know athletes, it's tough with time zones, the stress, the physicality, we finish late, adrenaline. I mean, did you struggle to sleep throughout your career? And was that a challenge for you to deal with in terms of the stress and the adrenaline?
I mean, you said it. Very difficult when he travels as much as we do with all the time zones, and then the pressure on top of it. To get you 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep, and on top of it, you're in a Wimbledon final, and pressure amounts. And I obviously won the year before, and you sometimes have good sleeping patterns, and sometimes you have bad sleeping patterns. I mean, every tennis player knows about that. In that tournament, I had a bad sleeping pattern, and I just wanted to sleep, and I took a sleeping pill. I think one too late. So by the time I woke up in the morning, I was still really groggy and drowsy and not well at all. So when I started playing, balls were passing me, and I felt I was still dreaming about that match. So thank God I woke up in time, and I was able to come back in that 5th set, and I was up a break 4-1 in the 5th. So it went almost well.
Boris, one of the things I respect about you so much, and I think one of the things that the tennis world and the sporting world respects about you so much, is you've shown a vulnerable side. You're willing to admit, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I am what I am to a certain degree. Do you have any regrets?
I think you can only have regrets if you haven't given it your all. If you were holding back. If you haven't really tried every possible way to become a better tennis player. And obviously, a better man, a better human being. I think I don't have regrets because of that. I mean, I've tried it all. I've played as hard as I could. I've broken ankles and hips and knees because of that right now. But if I would have to do it all over again, absolutely.
How tough is it for a professional athlete, especially an individual sport athlete, to manage ambition, reaching your potential, trying to, like you said, give it your best and not have any regrets, but also managing the social, the family? I mean, I know how much you love your family, and you've had some amazing loves in your life, but it's not without sacrifice on the social front at times.
No, traveling the world, it's maybe fun at 18 or 22, but when you get a bit older and you start your own family and you have kids, and then they gotta go to nursery and then eventually to school, it's very difficult to be away for such a long amount of time, and usually that happens. Then a crisis in your marriage happens, and again, I've done that too. So I speak from experience. To become a tennis player is great, and it's a wonderful job, and every young boy that's talented, should be able to, actually try to do it. But there's a price to be paid. There's with everything good, there's a bad side to it. It made me who I am today, so I'm very thankful. But a lot of players don't make it. They struggle. They stranded. They have to stop. When they're 24, 25. They can't pay the bills. They just they're not as good. So they have to start all over again with another profession. Some of them go back to school, want to get a degree. Others go into other walks of life. So yes, it's great talking about it once you've made it. But there are 1,000 stories that didn't make it, and I've just want to remind everybody about it.
Well, let's talk about your kids. You have 4 beautiful kids of tremendously different demographics and ages and relationships. Yeah. How do you enjoy being a father? How do you manage all of being Boris Becker, the icon, and trying to be a family man and having kids of such a broad age range?
Well, first of all, I started early. And I'm still at it. My oldest is almost 19, and my youngest is 2.
What have you learned?
Kids teach you much more than you ever be able to teach them. They teach you, patience and perseverance and just unconditional love you get from them. And obviously it's my most important role that I have, being a father. Because you never finished, and then obviously I'm far from perfect from that. I come from a nice set of parents. I have a great sister, and they teach me a lot. But at the end of the day, I couldn't compare my 4 children to any triumphs I had in Wimbledon or anywhere else. They're the ultimate for me. And the advantage is that the older I get, I feel like I become a better parent. And they benefit from that, and eventually you want then your kids to have kids themselves, so you're going to be granddad. But I told my oldest that I'm only 45, so give me at least another 5 years before you make me a granddad. So no, but I'm lucky. I'm lucky. They love me, they respect me, they're a lot with me. They don't live with me all the time, but it's the best thing I've ever done.